children, well, there's so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women of the North all talking about rights, these white men gonna be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. Ain't I a woman? Mm-hmm. Look at me. Look at my arms. I have plowed and planted and gathered in the barns, and no man can head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? Then they talk about this thing in the head. What's this they call it? Intellect. That's it, honey. Intellect. What's that got to do with women's rights and Negroes' rights? If my cup will hold but a pint and yours will hold a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half measure full? And then that man back there in the black, says that women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. Now, if the first woman that God ever made was strong enough to turn this world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now, they's asking to do it. And you men better let them. Obliged to you. Thank you for letting me speak to you this morning. Now old Sir Jordan ain't got nothing more to say.
And I don't know what reaction this is going to get because a lot of people jump at me when I say it. But unfortunately, all people in this country, black people and white people, are subjugated to the same system of media, are subjugated to the same systems of communication, are subjugated to the same conditioning. And that's something we definitely have to reckon with if we're going to ever get through any of this stuff. Moynihan, that's sort of the name that's associated with that word matriarchy, definitely has to be dealt with.
I'd like to deal with him
right,
face to face.
Right. I think that unfortunately a lot of us, black men and black women, believe in the myth of that matriarchy. And I think that belief engenders a lot of negative things. Number one, it says that matriarchy is inferior to patriarchy, which is a whole thing right there. You see that patriarchy is a sort of natural or divine order of things, which is not so. Two, that black men have believed and internalized the myth of white womanhood in this country and Anglo-Saxon impositions, so that they place us in relation to where white women are.
There's two things a woman, I believe, being a black. All right, there is a very good sentence written by a black woman named Kay Lindsay in which she said, where the white woman is the sexual object, black women are sexual laborers. Yes. White womanhood has been the prevailing standard of femininity in this country. If you were beautiful, you had pale skin. And women have only gained by being beautiful. You had light skin, preferably light hair. You were gentle, you were retiring, you were sweet, you were chaste. Because of our historical position as black women, most of us were slaves, which means we worked as hard as any men on plantations. Then we moved into factories. Most of us were not pure because on plantations we were bought to be breeders and whores. We were not qualified for the prevailing standards of femininity, white femininity, so we were cast out. If you are a woman who does not fit women's standards, you're a piece of crap. So we got none of the benefits of being a woman. They're double-edged benefits, but they are benefits. Money from wealthy men, so on and so forth. We got all of the liabilities. As I said before, we are on the lowest rung, even in a profession like prostitution, because we are valueless as black women. So we were brought up outside the pale of femininity, but we weren't considered worth turning into useful men. You know, because what is a black woman? She's a woman and she is also black. We weren't as good as black men, and we were useless. We weren't good enough to be imitated white women, so we had nothing. We were total outsiders, which is why, you know, economically we are on the absolute bottom, and psychologically, if you will, of the barrel. As I say, figuring out a theory that will embrace the paradox of fighting sexism, fighting the sexism of a group of people who are fighting racial and economic oppression from another group. It's a very interesting pyramid. It is black women being oppressed by white women who are also black women being oppressed by white women, black men, and white men. That is a situation that only non-white, if you will, black, Latin, so forth, Chinese women find themselves in. It is the kind of complexity that the white feminist movement has not yet in any way attempted to deal with.
The idea of peace. I had written a poem that said, a black woman speaks of white womanhood, of white supremacy, and a woman black should speak of white womanhood. My husbands, my fathers, my brothers, my sons, die for it. They said, the white supremacists said, that you were better than me, that your fair brow should never know the sweat of slavery. They lied. White womanhood too is enslaved. The difference is degree. They brought me here in chains. They brought you here, willing slaves to man. You bore him sons. I bore him sons. No, not willingly. He purchased you. He raped me. You were afraid to nurse your young, lest fallen breasts offend your master's sight, and he should flee to firmer loveliness. And so, you passed them, your children, on to me. Flesh that was your flesh, blood that was your blood, drank the sustenance of life from me. And as I gave suck, I knew I nursed my own child's enemy. I could have lied, told you your child was fed till it was dead of hunger, but I could not find the heart to kill orphaned innocence, for as it fed, it smiled, and burped and gurgled with content. And as for color, you know difference. Yes, in that first while, I kept your sons and daughters alive. But when they grew strong, in blood and bone that was of my milk, you taught them to hate me. You gave them the words mammy and nigger, so that strength that was of myself turned and spat upon me, despoiled my daughters, and killed my sons.
I wake up with an apology already forming in my mouth. This is what it means to be a contradiction. Too black to be a woman and not man enough to be black. This is what it means to occupy a vacant space. Have everyone slash each cross-stitched intersection of my identity with a straight blade. Tell me to pick one label or none at all. But ain't I a woman? When a black man tells me I'm too thick for my own good, when he follows me down the street, when I say no in 3 different octaves, ain't I a woman? When a white girl in my class calls us we, speaks of a universal need, says woman is the new black, talks picket signs like I've never marched before, talks injustice like I never met a cop before. When she hushes me, then speaks on my behalf, ain't I a woman? Ain't I a woman when the moon is full? When my mother rolls my naps in her palms, when my father shouts Harambe 7 times on New Year's Day. Ain't I been writing this poem for 3 years straight? Ain't Sojourner Truth been doing the same? Ain't Bell Hooks? Ain't Intozaki Shange? Ain't this a story that never makes the news? The vacant space that fills the airwaves, the silence of unwritten eulogies. Ain't this Liberia? Ain't this Haiti? Ain't this North Philly? Didn't no white girl closed mouth smile at me today? Tell me I'm beautiful, then hack apart my body, wear my lips, ass, and hair like a costume. Didn't she sell all 13 of my children and lynch my husband? Didn't she ask me to be quiet 1 too many times? Didn't I bruise a black man's ego swole today? Ask him to stop calling my scars sacrifices, calling my suffering an inconvenience, a blemish on the black man's movement, as if MLK didn't suck milk from a black woman's tit. But ain't I a bitch? Ain't I bitter? Ain't I divisive by accident? Don't I complicate the revolution with all my grievances? Ain't I still grieving? Ain't this my middle finger? Ain't I finally done apologizing? I am not an obstacle to navigate through. I'm the reason you are breathing. The feet that trod out the path, even the light that subverted all your darkness. Am I not the pulse of every one of your revolts? Ain't I a woman? Ain't I a woman? Ain't this a rhetorical question?